ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति शांति शांति। वागर्थायु संपृक्तौ वागर्थ प्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। हरि ओम। First of all, I express my deep gratitude to the organizers who have given me opportunity to share my views on Kashmir Śaivism with the audience. Friends, Kashmir Śaivism is a branch of Śaivism, of Shaiv philosophy, and Śaivism is one of the most ancient religions of the world. Most ancient living tradition of the world. All of us know how its origin may be traced back to the Vedas or even before the Vedas. In Indus civilization, one can say it is prehistoric religion. The connection of Śaivism with Indus Valley civilization is known to everyone. Then in Rig Veda, we do find mention of Rudra, and in Yajurveda and Atharvaveda, we find enormous reference of Shiva and Rudra. सर्वदर्शन संग्रहकार Madhavacharya, he discusses 16 philosophies there, out of which 4 are the branches of Śaivism. He discusses 4 philosophies: the Shaiv, the Pashpat, Pratyabhijna and Raseshwar. Similarly, in Shiv Purana, Vaman Purana, or in the Yamunachar,
Agam Pramani,
we do find mention of some other sects of Shaivism like Kapalik and Kalam. On the basis of that, we can say that there are more than 8 forms of Śaivism, as K.C. Pandey in his edition of Bhaskari mentions that there are 8 schools of Śaivism. The Shaiv Mat, the Pashpat Mat, the Pratyabhijna, the Raseshwar, the Kapalik, the Kalamut. Then there are others also. As we shall see, even Kashmir Śaivism, we find so many schools. Prativigyan school is the Kashmir Shaivism. As just I told you, there are 4 schools. Lakshmaju talks about Kram, Kul, Prativigya, and he adds Spanda as well. So there are 4 schools of Kashmir Shaivism. Now, whether Kashmir Shaivism should be called trick philosophy or not, there is a debate regarding that. Scholars like V.N. Pandit, they are of the view that Kashmir Shaivism cannot be equated with trick philosophy. Trick is part of Kashmir Shaivism. However, I think that we can take Kashmir Shaivism and trick philosophy as the synonymous one. So, I would, in the present lecture, discuss Kashmir Shaivism as a trick philosophy. Why it is called trick? Again, all of us know that it discusses about the 3 principles: Pati, Pasu, and Pas, Shiv, Shakti, and Anu. That's why it is called trick. Trick means the triad of Pati, Pasu, and Pas, or Shiv, Shakti, and Anu, or Para, Apara, and Parapara. But as R.C. Dwivedi says that since there are 3 traditions, Krama, Kul, and Prativigyan, that's why it is called trick. Some others may say that since this philosophy discusses about Ichha, Gyan, and Kriya, that's why it is. Sangamlal Pandey says that since it is philosophy based on the teachings of Somanand, Utpal, and Avinago, that's why it is trick. Then others may say that since, as Dr. Anil Tiwari has just talked about the 3 upayas, Sambhav, Sakt, and Aram, that's why it is called trick philosophy. One can say that if 20th century, if 19th century was the century of Vedanta, 20th century was the century of Kashmir Shaivism in India, or in Indian philosophical scenario. There were a number of scholars who came with the view that Kashmir Shaivism is the philosophy in which philosophical thought finds its climax or culmination. It is the perfect philosophy as it claims that it is Purnadvait or Paramadvait or Mahadvait. There is a series of scholars, beginning from J.C. Chatterjee, Gopinath Kaviraj, K.C. Pandey. Then you can say these people wrote in English, But we find that some Sanskrit tradition as well. At least there are three scholars, three great acharyas, Amritbag Bhavacharya, who wrote a number of texts, in fact, but one of them is Atma Vilas, on which B.N. Pandit commented on, that is known as Atma Vilasa Sundari. That is in fact, very good text to understand the philosophy of Kashmir Śaivism. It is original as well as descriptive. Then most of us might be familiar with the writing of Rameswar Jha, who wrote Purnata Pratyabhijna. And of course, Balajinath Pandit or B.N. Pandit, who just we saw that wrote a commentary on Atma Vilas as Atma Vilas Sundari. He wrote Swatantra Darpan. So these are the three very significant texts of Kashmir Śaivism which were written in 20th century, which somehow carried forward the philosophy of Kashmir Śaivism. Rameswar Jha was in fact one can say he was the man. Due to him, they published a Varanasi or Kashi school of Kashmir Śaivism, one can say. We find a number of scholars in Banaras who are fully devoted to the teaching and learning of Kashmir Śaivism. Professor Ellen Sharma, Professor Kamlakar Mishra, Professor Kamlesh Tripathi, Bettina Balmer, Thakur Jaidev Singh, Mark the work Tantra Lok, the famous work of Abhinav Gupta, was translated here in Hindi by Paramhans Mishra. In fact, he translated Tantra Sar as well. And that book, which is in volumes, has been published from Sampurnanand Sanskrit University. Then Mark has completed his translation of Tantra Lok with the commentary of Jairus Vivek, and that book is very soon to be published. Another translation of Tantra Lok was done here by Gautam Chakravarti. So, there is a number of scholars who are actively engaged in Kashmir Śaivism and working on Kashmir Śaivism. We, in our department, teach Kashmir Śaivism at master's level. Professor Rajesh Jha is presently engaging in the classes. In fact, most all these scholars they are unanimous in holding that Kashmir Shaivism is the philosophy in which Indian philosophical thought finds culmination. I shall discuss this view of these philosophers later on. First, we should have a general historical sketch of Kashmir Shaivism. As Dr. Anil Tiwari has just talked about, one can say Kashmir Shaivism, the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism started with Vasugupta in 9th century. His book Shri Sutra, which comprises 77 sutras, about which Dr. Tiwari has just given a brief introduction, is the first text of the system. Though in the system it is regarded as an Agam text. In fact, the Śaivism, Vaishnovism, Shaktism, all these schools or all these philosophies are agamic philosophies. So the basic text of Kashmir Shaivism is the agamic text. There are 10 Shaiva agams, 18 Raudra agams, and 64 Bhairava agams, on which this philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism is based. Kashmir Shaivites take recourse of all these agamas, though there are 3 agams, Siddha, Malini and Namak, on which this system is based. One can say that primarily Bhairava agams are regarded more authoritative in the tradition. Amongst these agams texts, all agamas are not available with us. What we have today are mainly available with us, that they are the Paratrinsika, then Vigyan Bhairav, then Swachandra Tantra, and Malini Vijayo Tantra. I think the main agamic texts which are available even now, for example, Vigyan Bhairav and Paratrinsika, on which Abhinavgupta wrote commentary, that is Vivaran. This Vijnana Bhairava and Paratrinsika, these two texts, these two Agamic texts are very significant. And then, of course, if we think that Shiv Sutra is an Agamic text because it was revealed to Vasugupta, then we can take Shiv Sutra as well. So, Swachandra Tantra, Malini Vijayottar, Vijnana Bhairav, Paratrinsika, and Shiv Sutra. These five are the major Agamic texts on which Kashmir Śaivism is based, or the philosophy of Kashmir Śaivism is based. Vijnana Bhairava and Paratrinsika, they are part of Rudra Yamal Tantra. And it would be very interesting to, often people think that Vijnana Bhairava is text of yoga. Of course, it is text of yoga and Tantra. It talks about 112 dharanas that Bhatta Ananda, who is commentator on Vijnana Bhairava, he wrote, these are the dharanas. So, in this Vijnana Bhairava we find 112 dharanas, 112 types of yogas. So basically the text is famous for that. Or the text is also famous for the Sahaj Yoga. In fact, Thakur Jayadev Singh, who had translated the text, he is of the view that this text is of yoga and sadhana. Look here, often we are told that Shiv Sutra is a text of sadhana, Ispandakarika is text of sadhana. But we have to see, or we have to find out the philosophy. In fact, I think that these texts are philosophically very significant. They do not talk about only sadhana. They are based on a philosophy, and a philosophy is present, and they are somehow preserving philosophy. There might be some historical situation, adverse historical situations, so they might not have preserved their philosophy, or they were not in such position. That's why they had to be preserved, and they were preserved in the sadhana of the Siddhas. There are 163 karikas in Vijnana Bhairava. 37 karikas in Paratrinsika. Again, a very interesting thing is, in fact, look here. There is a debate whether the text is Paratrinsika or Paratrisika. Contemporary scholars, I listened to Bettina Baumer's, she was of the view that this Paratrinsika is really speaking Paratrisika. Actually, they are following Abhinavagupta, who was of that view, that as this text talks about the Parabhattarika, Parabhattarika, which is Sambit. Sambit is the Parabhattarika, and which is controller of the three Ichha Shakti, Gyan Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. So, she is the Isika of these three. That's why the text is Paratrisika and not Paratrinsika. But we have to look why in tradition, though Abhinavagupta talks about this, but he himself writes the text as Paratrinsika. You may ask why I am so much talking about what is in name, but there is something in name. All of us are aware of the book of Trinsika, Trinsika of Vasubandhu. Now, look here, I am again narrating another point. That was in fact the view of B.N. Pandit. He was of the view that before the establishment of Trayambak Mattika in Kashmir, which took place in the 8th century, there was no systematic philosophy in Kashmir. This was the view of Balajinath Pandit. But we can say easily that this is not true. It is true that Kashmir and Kashmir Śaivism, Kashmir is famous as the land of Kashmir Shaivites, Kashmiri Pandits. But we should remember that before the Kashmir Śaivism, there was a long tradition of philosophical learning. Kashmir has been the center of teaching and learning of philosophy from its very establishment, one can say. Ambika Sharma ji or Anil Tiwari, both may be knowing the fact that in Vigyapti Matrita Siddhi, in his auto commentary of Vinsatika, Vasubandhu talks about Vaivhasik Kashmir, the view of Vaivhasik Kashmir. So there was an established school of Kashmir Vaivhasik at the time of Vasubandhu. There were two schools, one Gandhar school and another the Kashmir school. While refuting the doctrine of atomism, Vasubandhu refers to the view of Kashmir Vaivhasik. So before Kashmir Śaivism, there was a long tradition of, first the tradition of Vaibhasik and Sarvastivadi, later on tradition of Mahayana, and then the tradition we can in fact infer on the basis of that there was a tradition of the school of Buddhist logicians like Dingna Gandharmakirti as well. And there lies the significance of the title of Paratrinsika. They had to declare that our Trinsika is greater than the Trinsika of Buddhism. Now this land has nothing to do with Buddhism. Kāśmīra, Śaivism, now Śaivism was going to be the official church of the land. What is the content of Paratrinsika? Or what is, in fact, what is the content of Paratrinsika? That is the content of Vijnana Bhairava as well. Paratrinsika talks about Parasambit. Parasambit is the Parabhattarika. That the reality of Parasambit, of pure consciousness or supreme consciousness, and everything comes out of that. Ichha, Gyan and Kriya, they are the forms of Sambit. And everything comes from this Parabhattarika, Paradevi or Parasambit. The same is the philosophy of Vijnana Bhairava as well. Bhairava is the Vijnana. Bhairava is the consciousness. The supreme consciousness. There in Paratrinsika it is said that is Sambit is Parabhattarika. Here the writer is, or here the Agam is telling about the Bhairav Bhattarak, whose essential nature is a pure consciousness. And that pure consciousness or consciousness is the ultimate reality. It is beyond the duality of knower and known. All the division of knower and known, all the division of Prakriti and Purush, all the division of subject and object, actually that comes out of there. Parabhattarika or Parasambit, Paratrinsika would say, or that Vijnana Bhairava. So these texts are not only important to learn about the sadhana, we have to extract philosophy from them, and in fact by going through them, we can have an access to the history of ideas. When I went through Vigyan Bhairav, this reminded me of Alat Santi Prakaran of Manduk Karika. When one goes through Manduk Karika, particularly its Alat Santi Prakaran, one may think that it is the text of Advaita Vedanta. But how in the history of ideas Advaita Vedanta got a place? If you have to study about that, then you should read the last Santi Prakaran of Advaita, Manduk Karika. The same can be said about the Vijnana Bhairav. And we shall see the why the Ishwar Pratyavijna is the so significant text of Kāśmīra Śaivism. Though he was overshadowed by his grand pupil Abhinav Gupta, but I think that in the history of Kāśmīra Śaivism, this Ishwar Pratyavijna is the most significant text, the most, one can say, foundational text. Why? The time of Utpal Dev, just Dr. Tiwari told us that it was in 9th century that this Utpal Dev in fact, the time of Utpal Dev is 9th century. In Ishwar Pratyavijna, in fact, why I am talking about Ishwar Pratyavijna? Ishwar Pratyavijna, this text may be, Dr. Tiwari, you are, I just got the poster that you are going to deliver on Atma Tattva Vivek very soon. So you have to see that this man, Utpal Dev, wrote 3 siddhis. One Sambandha Siddhi, then Ishwar Siddhi, and then Ajar Pramatri Siddhi. Ajar Pramatri Siddhi. Besides the text, Ishwar Pratyavijna and his 2 commentaries on that, that is known as Ishwar Pratyavijna Vritti and Ishwar Pratyavijna Vivritti. On Ishwar Pratyavijna Vivritti, we have the commentary of Abhinav Gupta available. In fact, we shall come to this text. Before that, let us, in fact, go a few decades before. As you told that Shiva Sutra is the basic, in fact, the first foundational literature of the Kashmir Śaivism. Then we find Ispandakarika. Again, about Ispandakarika, there is a dispute regarding who is the author of Ispandakarika, whether Vasugupta or Bhattakallat. We find Ispandasarvasva of Bhattakallat. Bhattakallat was direct people of Vasugupta. So after Shivasutra, there is a Ispandakarika and Ispandasarvasva. If the authorship is ascribed to Bhattakallat, then on the one side is Bhattakallat, and then another side is Somananda and his text Śaivism. That is regarded as the most foundational literature of Kashmir Śaivism, of the Prativigya school. If Bhattakallat may be called as founder of Ispandi school, Somanand may be called as of Prativigya school. Śaivism is a text again that is very really philosophical text, consisting of more than 700 karikas, divided into 7 ahanikas, and there he discusses at least 10 Vedantic views. He refutes these views, the philosophies of different schools of Vedanta. He discusses about 22 schools and refutes them. He especially discusses refutes the doctrine of doctrine of Vyakarnas of Bhartihari, and propounds his own view of philosophy of language. He talks about Paravak. In fact, the credit goes to Somanand. He talks about the Paravak. Actually, grammarians led by Bhartihari, they were talking about only the 3 stages of the language. It was he who talks about the 4th stage of Paravak. Then he establishes that the Kashmir Śaivism is the Purnadvaya. Later on, his disciple Utpal Dev, about whom we are talking about, he in his Ishwar Prativigya comes out with the doctrine that the Sambit which you people are talking about is really speaking Ishwar. The Sambit of consciousness or para anubhav or pure experience. In fact, in this philosophy, it is believed that para sambit is for consciousness of chit. So para sambit or chit or consciousness is the ultimate reality. Now, one can say this is the view of Advaita Vedantins as well. They also believe that consciousness is the ultimate reality. However, the difference here is that the Kashmir Savites would say that this Sambit is not only of the nature of Prakash, but it is of the nature of Vimarsa as well. The Chetana or consciousness is not only of the nature of Prakash, but it is of the nature of Vimarsa as well. It is not only of the nature of a Gyan, but it is of the nature of Kriya as well. It is not only the Kriya aspect or the Prakash aspect is called Shiv, and Vimarsa aspect or Kriya aspect is called, the Gyan aspect or Prakash aspect is called the Shiv, and Kriya aspect or Vimarsa aspect is called Shakti. So ultimate reality is actually the union or identification of Shiv and Shakti, Prakash and Vimarsa, Gyan and Kriya. Now this is not acceptable to Advaita Vedantis. As we know that in Brahma Sutra, Shankaracharya in his commentary on Tattva Samanvaya Sutra, he is of the view that Gyan and Kriya, they are just opposite. Kriya is in fact the Vikar and Brahma is Avikari. So Brahma or ultimate reality is of the nature of Gyan, it is not of the nature of Kriya. Ultimate reality is consciousness or Sambit, so Sambit is of the nature of only Gyan and not of Kriya. We can discuss this point in another way also. Ultimate reality is, look here. Actually, we are the people of philosophy. We can discuss Kashmir Śaivism in core philosophical way. The whole debate is debate about the consciousness. What is the nature of consciousness? What is the nature of consciousness? The history of Indian philosophy may be interpreted as a history of philosophy of mind or philosophy of consciousness. So the whole debate is actually debate regarding the nature of consciousness, how we should conceive consciousness. Advaitins will have the view that the ultimate reality is of pure consciousness, undifferentiated consciousness. Consciousness is devoid of all determination. So ultimate reality is actually pure, undifferentiated consciousness. This consciousness is devoid of egoity. It is beyond the duality of knower and known, Pramatri and Prameya Bhav, Jnata and Gyeya Bhav. It is just the Suddha Jnana Swarup. It is of the nature of pure consciousness and pure knowledge. Now, Kāśmīra Śaivists would say that if consciousness is not self-conscious, then it ceases to be consciousness. So consciousness is really self-consciousness. And the power by which consciousness becomes self-conscious, that is called vimerse. So consciousness is not only of the nature of revelation, it is self-conscious, and that self-conscious Shiv is the ultimate reality. This power of self-consciousness, Kāśmīra Śaivists would say, that is the vimerse, or that is the sponge. If consciousness is not self-conscious, then it would be just like inert matter. It would be just like darkness. So what makes consciousness consciousness? What is the essence of consciousness? What is the sar of Chit or Sambit? What is the sar of Prakash? What is the sar of Avbhasan? That is called the vimerse. That is called the Sakti. So, and the Prakash aspect we can understand that as Shiv. So that self-conscious reality is actually the ultimate reality. And everything comes out of that. Everything comes out of that, and everything is actually within that. That's why that reality is Vishwotrin as well as Vishwamaya, transcendent as well as immanent. And since this ultimate reality is, they call it Purna Ahanta, is endowed with I. Though this I should not be understood in terms of relational I, so far as we are concerned, we are also self-conscious, but in fact our I is individual I. So far as ultimate reality is concerned, his I is Purna Ahanta or Para Ahanta, which includes everything within itself. That's why it is Purna. That's why it is Purna. That's why Kāśmīris talk about the full consciousness or perfect consciousness, Purnatva. And since it is endowed with since it is endowed with the power of revelation or power of vimarsa, spand. In fact, the vimarsa, spand, the swatantra, parmeshwarata, all these are synonymous in the system. So the basic objection is that if conscious is not self-conscious, so how then it can be called consciousness? So consciousness is necessarily self-conscious, and that self-conscious reality is here the Param Shiv, and that is the, in fact, ultimate reality. Everything comes out of him, and actually there is nothing in what is called nothing, which is in fact really speaking out of him. So everything actually happens within the mind of Shiv or universal mind. That's why ultimately I think this philosophy is philosophy of idealism. Ultimately Shaivism is a philosophy of idealism. Everything is actually reflected in the consciousness of Shiva. Again and again we are given example of how the everything so many examples are given regarding how everything happens in mind of Shiva. So I was talking about, now look here, what is the difference? One can easily distinguish between the idea of pure consciousness and the idea of self-conscious consciousness. And this self-conscious consciousness is actually the God, the Ishvara. And this is free. We cannot think of freedom in pure indeterminate Brahman of Advaita Vedanta. That's why Kāśmīra say that is the Santa Brahmavad or Abhav Brahmavad. It is very much near to Sarvasunyavadins, very much near to the Madhyamik Sunyavad. So it is they who actually आ गया आ जाएगा थ्रू ना call that Ishwar. No one can. So only what makes Ishwar is its self-consciousness. What makes Ishwar is its power of freedom. Its absolute sovereignty of freedom. What makes Ishwar its Shakti, the enormous Shakti. So, this concept of Ishwar was introduced. I do not say that it was not, in fact, earlier people were not, in fact, acquainted with the idea of Ishwar. But the credit goes to this one Utpal Dev. And he is writing another text that is called Ishwar Siddhi. The Purupaks, in fact, when you would go into the writings of Utpal Dev, you will find that the Purupaks is the Buddhism, the Dignagdhan Kirti school, the school of Vasubandhu or Yogachar, the school of Sunyavad, that you may find in Vigyan Bhairav as well as I told you. So that man, in fact, he made the people recognize the power of Ishwara, Ishwar Prativi. So that's why this text may also be known as Ishwar Prativigyan. He wrote Ishwar Prativigyan, Vritti on Ishwar Prativigyan, then Vivritti on. Then after that, after Utpal Dev, the great Acharya is Abhinav. He wrote at least 40 texts. The most important is Tantra Lok. It is just volumes. It is in volumes. It is just Encyclopedia of Indian Sadhana or Tantra Sadhana. Then he wrote Paramarth Sar, Tantra Sar, commentary on Ishwar Prativigyan and Ishwar Prativigyan Vivritti, commentary on commentary on Paratrisika, that is Paratrisika Vivaran. Then after Abhinav Gupta, his immediate disciple, Shri, all of you know that he wrote Prativigyan Hridaya. Again, the text is about how the Chit or becomes Chit. How Chitta becomes Chit. The sadhana would be how Chitta becomes Chit. Everything comes out of Chit or Chiti. And at the level of humans, it becomes Chit. So that is the content. I would not go into detail of that. That is very smaller text, Prativigyan Hridaya. This man also wrote commentary on the Shiv Sutra, that is known as Shiv Sutra Vivarsani, and that is very, in fact, that has been translated by Thakur Jayadev Singh. Thakur Jayadev Singh has translated most of the texts, and he is also one of those people who believe that, in fact, Bettina Baumer writes how when he was on bed and he was departing his soul, he told her that he believes that it is in Kashmir Śaivism that culmination of Indian thought finds. So Shiv Sutra Vimarsani is again a very significant text, and then he wrote commentary on Vigyan Bhairav, this Chamaraj. Again, there is a very interesting that he commented only on 24 verses. And from 25th we find the commentary of Shivopadhyaya. In fact, the historical account of Kashmir Śaivism cannot be, in fact, complete without the mention of this man Shivopadhyaya. Often Kashmir Shaivites do not talk about him. They do not talk about two people, Sahib Kaul and Shivopadhyaya. Sahib Kaul was contemporary of Aurangzeb and Shah Jahan. He was a Siddh. He was author of Devi Naam Vilas, then Sachidanand Valli, and I am forgetting. And then this man, Shivopadhyaya, he wrote commentary on Vigyan Bhairava Udyot Tika. And he is of the, in fact, he reconciles Advaita Vedanta and Kashmir Śaivism in the text, in the commentary. But as I told you, when you yourself would go into the text of Vigyan Bhairava and Paratrisika, you will find that these texts are propounding the philosophy of Advaita. And that Advaita is very much near to Advaita Sankaracharya. Though it is true that from Somanand, Utpal and Abhinavgupta, again one can say that in Paramarthasar, there may be another reading in Paramarthasar and the philosophy of Paramarthasar is again one can say very much near to Advaita Sankaracharya. So, this Shivopadhyaya and Sahib Kaul, these are the people who, in fact, interpreted the Kashmir Śaivism in the light of, one can say, Advaita Vedanta, or they somehow reconciled Advaita Vedanta and Kashmir Śaivism. In fact, they were of the view that the teaching of the agamic text is the teaching of the Kashmir Śaivism is really speaking the Advaita. So far as the ultimate reality, as I told you, that is the of Param Shiv, that is called an Uttar. As I told you, that he is actually the unity of Shiv and Shakti, Prakasa and Vimarsh, Gyan and Kriya. And he is actually of the nature of, or that ultimate reality is of the nature of consciousness, or the Param Shiv is of the nature of Shakti. Though he is infinite Shakti, there are 5 Shaktis which are very important. They are known as Chit Shakti, Ananda Shakti, Ichha Shakti, Gyan Shakti and Kriya Shakti. When we look ultimate reality in these perspectives, we find that reality in the form of Shiv, Shakti, Sadashiv, Ishwar and Sadvidya. So Kashmir Shaivites talk about the Panch Shakti, they talk about the Panch Kritya as well. Ultimate reality, as we saw, that Ishwar or Shiv, so it always performs 5 functions, that is known as Srishti, Sthit, Sanghar, Anugrah and Tirodhan. That ultimate reality is ultimately, there is nothing beyond that. That's why it is called an Uttar. I had earlier told you that is Vishwatrin as well as Vishwamay. In its Vishwatrin aspect, that is called an Uttar. And from Vishwamay aspects, there begins the creation that is known as Shiv, Shakti, Sadashiv, Ishwar, Prativigya, is Sadashiv, Ishwar, Sarvidya. These five form the Suddha Adva, that is called pure way of creation. Then it starts the Maya Adva, or impure creation, beginning from Maya. There is Maya, then five Kanchukas. Maya is the principle of obscuration, and then we have the five Kanchukas. They are known as Kala, Vidya, then Kala, Vidya, Rag, Kal, and Niyati. And then these 11 tattvas are actually, then there are 20, that ultimate reality is covered in the Kanchukas. On the one side it becomes Purus, on subjective side, on the objective sides it becomes Prakriti, and we have the Prakriti and its 23 evolutes up to the stage of Prithvi or Earth. So everything comes out of, is the extension of a Shiva consciousness. This Srishti Prakriya is real. It is the play of 36 principles, as I told you, and it is real. So far as the sadhana paksh is concerned, really speaking, I am not the proper person to speak on that. I would talk about only what is called Kitabi Gyan, and they, in fact, Kāśmīra talk about two types of knowledge that is known as Paurus Gyan and Bodh Gyan. They distinguish between Paurus Gyan and Bodh Gyan, and actually it is the Paurus Gyan that matters, and that we can had only by the Shastra or Guru, or in some case by oneself. But what is needed is the Shakti path. So ultimately we know that it is the Shiva who binds us, or who he has bound himself. The whole is everything is actually the play of Shiva, whether it is called Srishti or whether it is called Visarga or Pralaya. One is Unmesh and another is Nimesh. So it goes on. The Prativigyansic system is actually meant for to make us recognize our true Shivahood, that Shiv is the ultimate reality, to make us realize of our akritim aham vispurnam, to realize our universal self. We have, due to ignorance, we are due to ignorance tied down to the psychophysical organism. We conceive ourselves a limited one, as a limited doer, knower. Actually, we are omniscient, omnipotent, So we have to realize that three upayas have been in fact prescribed for that. Upaya is actually yoga, that is the Ano upaya, Sakta upaya, Sambha upaya, and lastly the Anupaya, which is the Prativigya, I think, about which Dr. Tiwari mentioned in the beginning. So much is to be said about Kashmir Shaivism. I just finish here. Thank you all. Thank you all for listening to me.